I don't be too cynical about this, Vashi, but part of me wonders if there isn't a bit of liberal mischief in this.
Donald Trump says it's time to negotiate. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, Donald Trump coming out with a big post saying that Carney needs to negotiate immediately. We also got some new polling data. Got a bunch of other stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, got Shrey Teese posting a new Nanos poll. 39% Liberals, 35% Conservatives, 12.6% for the NDP. This one modeled out as 160 seats for the Liberals and 126 for the Conservatives. And there's actually one more poll we can see here that has just come out. This coming from Liaison Strategies, 42% for the Liberals, 35% for the Conservatives, 9% for the NDP. We've also got this one from Abacus Data, conditions to support or oppose early federal election, and it shows 27% and 41% approve if produced a majority government that could provide more political stability in Canada, with only 16% opposed. We've got Parliament was unable to pass any legislation and needs a reset. We're seeing 42 and 16% in favor of that. And we also have it produced a majority Mark Carney government that could provide more political stability in Canada, and that's showing 50% that approve of that. So it's kind of sad here, just this polling data. Canadians still don't know who Mark Carney is. They don't realize this guy's using them. Moving ahead, we've got breaking news. Air Canada has suspended all flights to Cuba, citing aviation fuel shortages. So they will be sending flights out there to bring people back, but no more flying to Cuba. And apparently, Cuba's held on to enough aviation fuel, just enough aviation fuel for the communist government to get out of Cuba. But that's basically it. They've run out. We also got this from Bruce Fanjoy. Yeah, he's having to eat his own words here. We've got, please see my statement regarding the government's updated return to office policy. So they're forcing Canadians to go back to work in the office. And well, the response has been a complete meltdown. Canadians don't want to go back to work. Mark Carney wants them back in the office. And he says on February 5th, 2026, the federal government announced an updated return to office policy for federal public servants. Today, I am calling upon the government to reconsider this policy for the following reasons. And it says reducing operating costs, and it says it increases the pollution. That's hilarious. Little no evidence that a one-size-fit-all policy will improve productivity, yada yada yada. This guy's just groveling to the people of Carleton. They voted for the wrong guy. And we've got this one here. Pierre Poilievre wanted to drop the tax on severance packages from laid off GM workers, and well, the Carney Liberals have rejected that. Finance Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne flatly rejected the call, saying such a policy would hobble the government's ability to respond when problems arise. Yeah, okay. A government that cared about the people wouldn't tax severances ever. And we've got this one breaking behind doors. Liberals and Conservatives are exploring deals to end gridlock and keep PM Carney's minority government afloat, even as the PM downplays talk of spring election. So this is a good move by the Conservatives. Just keep this going, because the longer Carney goes without getting anything done, the further it looks bad. The only thing here is if Donald Trump rips up Kuzma, Mark Carney can use that to scare Canadians, because clearly Canadians are very easily spooked into voting for him. He was supposed to be the guy to handle Donald Trump. I don't know how they can run on that, but fear will motivate people. It motivates people more than hope. And basically this just takes away Carney's ability to just call an election because he wants a majority government. It makes him look greedy. Canadians want results right now. They don't want an election. And we saw those ballots being ordered recently, 700,000 of them. That could just be for by-election, since there was 3 Liberals that just stepped down. And those snap election could be trying to scare floor crossers into joining Carney. There's a lot of moving pieces here. Before we get into any of that stuff, let's just touch on Jamil, who was just jailed in Hong Kong for 20 years because he believed in free speech in Hong Kong. This is who Mark Carney is getting into bed with, Xi Jinping in China.
We're going to start tonight with developing news as Canada seeks to reset relationships with China. A stark reminder this evening of how Beijing operates. Hong Kong's pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai has been sentenced to 20 years in prison under a China-imposed national security law, the stiffest penalty under the law since its inception. You can see on a prison van right here, one of which is believed to be carrying Lai leaving court. Lai has been a fierce critic of Beijing for decades, founding a popular pro-democracy newspaper that ran for 26 years until it was forced to shut down. He was arrested in 2020 and found guilty this past December of conspiring with others to collude with foreign forces to undermine Chinese rule in the territory. Mr. Lai.
So he's been very critical of the Chinese Communist Party and the government. For years, he ran Apple Daily in Hong Kong, one of the most popular pro-democracy newspapers out there. And once China took over Hong Kong from the British Empire not too long ago, they're now sticking him in jail because they don't want him speaking up anymore. This is who Carney wants us to get closer with. It's ridiculous. Canadians need to give their head a shake if they think this is the right direction.
He pleaded not guilty to those charges. He has strong Canadian connections as well. His mom was a Canadian citizen, and he has close family living in Ontario. Mr. Lai also has extensive business investments in the Niagara region, including hotels, restaurants, bars, and spas. Canada, along with several other countries today, including the U.S. and EU, have urged for the release of Lai. And domestically, there's been a strong multi-partisan push to grant Lai honorary Canadian citizenship, a push, though, the government has so far refused to take up. With me now is...
Of course they're not going to do that, because the last thing the Carney government wants is more pro-free speech people around here. They're trying to take away our free speech. I mean, look at this. Minister Joly stated that Bill C-8 would not allow the minister to prohibit the use of services like the internet to any person, despite those exact words appearing in the legislation. We'll dig into Bill C-8 in another video, but the Liberals are trying to give themselves king-like powers in Parliament. So they bring on Jamil's son here.
What does what your father has endured and what's happened to your father, what should it tell us about the way that China operates?
Multiple states have called out for his release. I think everybody sees this as kind of a very black and white case of at this point, it's just elder abuse. And obviously his health has deteriorated, and it's not in China or Hong Kong's best interest to have him die there, essentially. And after so many states, including Canada, who have called out for his release, if they're not even willing to do something so humane and very easy to do. It will take them 2 hours to send him to put on a plane and send him away. If not even willing to do that, I think that shows you all you need to know about the country's relationship with Hong Kong and China.
I'm not surprised. They've got 1 million people, Uyghurs, in camps, re-education camps, they call them, because of their values. They're different than the rest of China, and they re-educate them. They basically enslave these people. So it takes a real special someone to call for a new world order and get into bed with China, like Mark Carney. Clearly has no problem with all the Uyghurs being jailed and tied up in these camps. Jumping ahead, talking about Jamil Jivani going down and talking with Trump and J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, etc. This has stirred things up because it's basically forced Carney's hand. The word's gotten out that he's not exactly trying to negotiate for a deal. He's dragging his heels on the Kuzma renegotiations. Mexico's much further ahead.
I think, look, credit to Jamil Jivani. He got some good meetings in Washington, and I think it's probably good for his future political prospects if he's a potential leader of the Conservatives down the road. I don't see how any of this helps Pierre Poilievre, frankly, and I think part of I don't be too cynical about this, Vashi, but part of me wonders if there isn't a bit of liberal mischief in this, that they're kind of, taking meetings with Mr. Jivani and Dominic LeBlanc. So it elevates him in the eyes of the public, I suppose, which is not.
I don't think that's what's happening. This forces Carney out of his little hole. He has to go negotiate now. He doesn't want to negotiate. He doesn't want a deal. It's bad for him to get a deal. He needs a majority government. The only way is the fear of Donald Trump. Of course, they can spin this however they want. That's not what's going on.
Good for Mr. Poilievre, and it helps Mr. Jivani, who enjoys his, he's building his brand, but he's very much of a maverick, and I think the way that Donald Trump's whimsical fashion of the way he's handling tariffs and everything, it's so mercurial and unpredictable. I'm not sure that any one meeting with a backbench opposition member from Canada is going to change anything. I think what David Frum was saying earlier will have much more impact, the symbolic vote in the Senate, and more likely the Supreme Court ruling that will outlaw some of his tariffs.
Well, let's look at what really has changed since Jamil Jivani went down there. We have something. So Donald Trump just tweeted this out here, and you'll note something towards the bottom here, which I think is a result of Jamil Jivani going down there.
He says the country of Canada has treated the United States very unfairly for decades. Now things are turning around for the USA and fast. But imagine Canada is building a massive bridge between Ontario and Michigan. They own both the Canada and the United States side, and of course built it with virtually no U.S. content. So the Post goes on to talk more about the bridge. It doesn't name it, but I assume that it is the Gordie Howe Bridge, which is currently under construction. It will be the third bridge that kind of connects Detroit and Windsor. Canadians, of course, invested to the tune of billions of dollars. At minimum, I think it is $4.5 billion to construct that bridge. What does the United States get? He writes absolutely nothing. Ontario, and now he loops in a whole bunch of other issues. Ontario won't even put U.S. spirits, beverages, and other alcohol products on their shelves, referencing Premier Ford's decision to pull U.S. alcohol out of the LCBO. They're absolutely prohibited from doing so. And now, on top of everything else, Prime Minister Carney wants to make a deal with China, which will eat Canada alive. We'll just get the leftovers, Trump writes. I don't think so. The tariffs Canada charges for dairy products, he goes on to say, are unfair, something that he has said on numerous occasions. And I should point out, he makes that remark ahead of the CUSMA review that will unfold this year. Then he goes on to say, and this is the new part of Trump's threat, I will not allow this bridge to open until the United States is fully compensated for everything we have given them. And also, importantly, Canada treats the United States with the fairness and respect that we deserve. We will start negotiations immediately. With all that we have given them, we should own perhaps at least 1/2 of this asset. The revenues generated because of the U.S. market will be astronomical. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
So it's the part there at the end, which Melissa's got highlighted here. We will start negotiations immediately. There was no negotiations. Carney wasn't even trying. It wasn't even on the agenda. Mark, who cares? Carney did not want to get a deal. He didn't want to even negotiate. Now Trump is forcing him to negotiate here. I don't know how the bridge came up, but basically Jamil goes down and suddenly Trump saying, let's negotiate. It's time to get this done. Brings up once again supply management and China, and it's time to make a deal. So what's Carney going to do here? This is also going to reveal where Donald Trump's at. Is he trying to negotiate just for America and getting a good deal there? Is he trying to get Alberta to separate and join America? Or is he working with Mark Carney to help tank Canada and in the process making America much stronger? What comes from this should eliminate one of these possibilities.
The other side of it is, though, he does seem to have connections that a lot of others don't. And it is kind of interesting that even though he says he offered for a long time to be of service to the government, they never took him up on the offer.
Yeah, Benzie just used the term maverick, and I recall being on his show any number of times because he was a colleague of ours at Bell Media. He was on iHeartRadio. He had a show there, and that became very complicated, and he was no longer there at a certain point. But he is that type of person. He's going to do things that he thinks that are going to help him, obviously, because he wants to build his own profile. But here, I think that it came from a sincere place. He does have that connection with J.D. Vance. So we've learned about it. He's talked about it. But now we find out that it's very real. So, it's getting a meeting with the vice president and the president of the United States, that's not shabby. And yes,
Exactly. I'm glad Tom calls that out. That's not shabby at all. He's got not only that, Marco Rubio and as well as some of those industry leaders. He got a lot of good meetings there. He's not just some Joe Blow that showed up on the street and got all those meetings. So something's happening here in the background.
Sure, there might be a little bit of fun being had by the Liberals, but to the extent that Mr. Jivani said he wanted to debrief, he said, Prime Minister Carney, we knew that wasn't going to happen, but he got a chance to meet with Dominic LeBlanc, talk to him about what went on down there. Look, any Canadian with contacts right now should be using those contacts, whether it's a provincial premier or a business leader or anything else. We've got to talk to Americans. We've got to make them see that it's in everybody's interest to have, especially the new Canada-US-Mexico trade deal. I was listening to your great interview over the weekend with Kirsten Hellman, our outgoing ambassador to the United States. And she was saying, look, based on all of her contacts there in the U.S., the vast majority of people who are either elected or senior government types, they all agree that it's in the U.S.'s best interest. But Donald Trump, perhaps playing a negotiating game, but probably expressing his deepest thoughts, says he doesn't care whether or not there's another Canada-US-Mexico trade deal. I think that it is important. Anybody who wants to help is welcome. And I think that Jivani is playing a positive role here.
Do you think it will lead to, Brian, any change in posture from the federal government, who have run this set of negotiations? And granted, they are different in context than the ones, the first round with NAFTA under Trump version 1, but they have run them very differently than that government did, right? There was a real, Team Canada, we kept calling it, approach where it was premiers, it was opposition members, it was a NAFTA advisory council. Now the advisory council says, hey, nobody's talked to us in 6 months. There's, very little. I mean, even Minister LeBlanc was going to go for official negotiations in the middle of January, and that has never materialized.
Listen to this. They're not doing anything. The Carney government is not even trying to make a deal. They don't want any of this to go on because this doesn't help them in the polls. This is so greedy what they're doing to Canadians.
Do you think they might change their posture at all, given what's just unfolded?
Well, I agree with my esteemed colleague's points. I think the idea that anybody that has those types of contacts, as Tom points out, it's certainly pretty impressive to get those meetings. And if they can do that and sort of toe the line, the lines of the government, lines of Canada, of course, it's important for that to be the case, given that it's different political parties. I have no reason to think that wasn't what transpired, but nevertheless worth mentioning. So, yeah, I think anybody and everybody should try to do that. Now, to your point, it doesn't seem to be as much of a Team Canada approach as last time. That might be true. I'm not sort of involved in those conversations this time around. Back then, I
There's no Team Canada approach here. This is just Mark Carney running the Brookfield Party of Canada. Carney is getting his hand forced here. Donald Trump is forcing him to come negotiate. And if he doesn't negotiate, well, this is going to look awful and this whole grift is going to blow up in his face. So the next few days here are going to be interesting.
I think at the end of the day, Trump's not listening to anybody. So whether it be other decision makers that have power on other institutions, he doesn't really seem to care all that much. So frankly, the Team Canada approach, although I would still encourage people to do it, is probably not as much as last time going to be about the team and people trying to talk to other decision makers and other institutions in the U.S., whether it be sort of, for example, the business community. I just don't think that they have much of an impact on President Trump's thinking and his actions.
There is no Team Canada here. I mean, right off the jump, we had David Eby trying to block a pipeline from Alberta to the West Coast. Where's the Team Canada?
You'll notice by the presence of the fifth box that Lisa is with us. Thanks, Lisa, for the patience. I appreciate it. We're just talking about Jamil Jivani's trip and the fact that he had a meeting with Minister LeBlanc, kind of an evolution from, oh, this rogue MP went to D.C. to, oh, he met with the trade minister and they had what the trade minister's office is calling a productive meeting today. What do you attribute that evolution to?
Maybe everybody's understanding that to play politics on a matter like this is the wrong move for the Canadian public. And I think that's for Mr. Jivani as well as for the federal Liberal government. And maybe his backbench MPs should learn that message as well, because I saw one clip where there's a backbench MP saying that Mr. Jivani is like the friend to Hitler or something. That's dumb. Shouldn't be saying that. We should be using every opportunity we can to make the connections we have. But on the same time, it's not an opportunity for the Conservatives to start scoring points and saying, well, we can get the meetings you can't get down there in the United States. I think all this stuff has to be done with great care, a lot of thought. I'm very glad that Mr. Jivani is talking to Mr. LeBlanc. He's talking, debriefing probably with the PMO. And I think he should debrief with the OLO, quite frankly, and Pierre Poilievre as well, because he's a member of that caucus. And that is tricky to balance on all fronts. But it must be done because you have to show a united face to the United States. And as well, the Canadian public the Canadian public will not put up with playing politics on this one.
Yeah, that's well said. And I'll see if we can find the clip she was talking about. So we've got the clip here, Harrison Faulkner posting this. It's Liberal MP John Paul Danko refers to Jamil Jivani as Unity Mitford when meeting with U.S. administration officials. Unity Mitford was a British woman who became a close personal friend of the funny mustache guy from WW2.
A U.S. hostile government, deliberate destruction of global allegiances and the stability that our country has relied on. We have a Conservative Party of Canada's own Unity Mitford who is attempting to freelance negotiations with the American president right now. There's separatist movements.
What a point of order.
Their own Unity Mitford right there. This guy's disgusting. There's no low these liberal scum won't stoop to. Danko doubles down on his comments comparing Jamil Jivani to the disgraced British confidant of H-word guy Unity Mitford. Look at this. He reposted it from Juno News. This guy's unbelievable. He needs to be removed from office. Let's start one of those petitions to get him removed. Will that be put on CTV if we start a petition and get 50,000 signatures on it to get this guy removed from Parliament? I don't think so.
Benzie, what are your thoughts on, Tom alluded to what outgoing Ambassador Hillman told us over the weekend, which is essentially like when I point blank wanted to know whether or not she felt after meeting with Trump and other people in his orbit constantly over the last year, she felt like Trump still wanted Kuzma to stick around. She couldn't answer the question. What does that tell you?
I don't think Mr. Trump knows whether he wants Kuzma to be around anymore, Vashi. I think he's so vexed about Bad Bunny yesterday. He was in a panic on Twitter or Truth Social. I mean, this is not a normal presidency. Let's be charitable and say that. And on some very important fronts, it's incredibly abnormal and incredibly problematic. And I think what David Trump said earlier about the midterm elections coming, I think Mr. Trump is very worried. The cost of living is going up in the United States. I also don't believe that he will be able to do anything to thwart those free and fair elections. Although when the results are in, I'm going to go out on a limb, Vashi, and say that he will question them if the Democrats take the House and then manage to get the Senate too. I'm sure he'll be whining and complaining, and maybe Bad Bunny will be a part of that too. I don't know. But the whole thing is just we are dealing with someone very erratic, and it's great that Jamil Jivani got meetings. It's great that Mark Carney had his Oval Office meeting and it went pretty well for Canada's sake. But again, at the end of the day, I don't know if there is a plan on the Americans' part. I don't think they know if there's a plan.
There is a plan. He knows there's a plan. Carney's not even trying to make a deal. He can't be this naive.
I think Mr. Trump himself knows if there's a plan.
It does feel that the political context in the U.S. will matter, right? And you could argue, Tom, that it's changed even in the last month with everything that's gone on with ICE and the sort of, Trump has blinked on more than one occasion. Now you've got the Dems this week possibly putting specifically the Canadian tariffs to a vote, and the Republicans allowing for that to go ahead because their blockade of it has essentially subsided. What's your take on sort of his potential political vulnerabilities and how it might impact our case?
Well, whatever else is going on in his mind, and that's not always very clear, Donald Trump is singularly attentive to the fact that he's got to face these famous midterm elections this year. And he's got an eye on that. And he's not a career politician. He's done a lot of other stuff in his life, but he's a quick study when it comes to the basics of it. And he understands that the midterms are crucial because they played a trick on him the last time when he lost a whole bunch of seats. And he really couldn't believe it because he thought he had just been doing wonderfully.
Over the next couple of days, we're going to find out what happens here with all of this because Mark Carney is now being forced to go back to the table. We got a great take from Kate Harrison on CBC.
Okay, quickly, I got to get Robin. I got to get to a break.
Yeah, the onus on tangibles, on trade progress, should be on the government.
Sure.
And previous negotiations have relied on a multi-partisan effort and certainly a bipartisan effort to leverage relationships to make sure that we are having the conversations that matter. We have gone many, many months now without knowing the status of any strategy or conversations that have mattered. So now we know that the U.S. is perhaps willing to entertain a conversation from our government if they're willing to have one.
And that's just it. Donald Trump is saying we will start negotiations immediately. So what is Carney going to do? Is he going to go back into his little cave and hide away and just hope that Donald Trump keeps getting more angry and then get ready to call an election? If he calls an election without the NDP getting their leader back, I don't know if that's going to go too well for him in the polls. In the political landscape, it's a long time away, the end of March, when the NDP finally get their leader. What will happen?